This is a story of how my late father supposedly returned from his grave to update his will and cut me out of everything he had assured me repeatedly would be mine. The first thing you should know is that the air in Chad's office, yeah, that smug son of a bitch lawyer, always smelled like old coffee and fresh betrayal. Even before today, I swear the walls in that place leaned forward like they wanted to hear gossip. But that day, the day everything broke, it was worse. Too quiet, too clean, too staged. I sat there at the polished mahogany table, staring at a stack of papers that looked like something out of a horror flick. My dad had been dead 3 weeks. 3 fucking weeks. We buried him, shoveled dirt, watched the flowers wilt, ate too much bad casserole from neighbors who just wanted to feel useful. And now, suddenly, like some sick joke, here was a brand new will. Crisp, fresh, like it had been printed that morning on a laser printer that still smelled like warm ink. And the signature at the bottom? Christ almighty, it wasn't shaky, it wasn't weak, it was flawless. Bold strokes, steady hand, full of confidence. The kind of signature you only get when you're alive and holding the pen yourself. Last I checked, Dad was in the ground, not at Office Depot picking up ballpoints. I looked up. Jason was across from me, leaning back with his ankle propped over his knee like he was auditioning for douchebag of the year. That smirk on his face could curdle milk. Rebecca sat to his left, twirling a strand of perfectly flat-ironed hair, her nails clicking against the table in rhythm like she was at a damn fashion show instead of in the middle of my father's legacy being auctioned off on paper. And at the head sat Evelyn, my mother. Pearls, red lipstick, posture so straight you'd think she was balancing a rod up her spine. Her face calm, smooth, unreadable, except for that one tiny curl of satisfaction at the corner of her mouth. The lawyer's voice cracked as he read aloud. According to this updated version, the bulk of the estate, the family home, the company, and the trust now go to Jason and Rebecca. I felt my ears buzz, my skin heat. And Sarah, his eyes flicked at me like I was a line item. You will receive items of sentimental value. Sentimental value? Are you fucking kidding me? The daughter who cleaned vomit bowls, who spoon-fed soup when Dad's arms went too weak, who sat in that freezing hospital chair while his body turned to paper, gets a shoebox of photographs and maybe his fishing rod? Oh yeah, that sounds fair. Jason leaned forward, elbows on the table, grin splitting wider. Maybe Dad just realized who actually deserved it. Rebecca laughed behind her hand. Evelyn didn't even blink. Her eyes locked on mine like ice cubes pressed into skin. And that's when I felt it. That snap. That sharp, jagged fracture somewhere inside my chest. But I didn't speak. Not yet. Because this was bigger than a forged signature. This was bigger than inheritance. This was betrayal. The kind of betrayal that doesn't just sting, it burns a hole straight through your ribcage. So let me rewind, because if you don't understand the circus I grew up in, you won't understand how far these clowns were willing to go to write me out of the story. My name's Sarah, 32, born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and apparently the family scapegoat since the day I learned to walk. Dad, Edward Hayes, was a self-made man. Riverbend construction. He started with a rust bucket pickup, a half-broken ladder, and a back that never gave up. By the time I hit middle school, he'd built a company with crews, trucks, and contracts all over the state. He was the kind of man who came home covered in dust, boots heavy, hands raw, but still found the energy to sit with me at the kitchen table and help me with algebra. Evelyn, my mother, was the polished one. Pearls for the grocery store, makeup for the mailbox. She played the part of the perfect wife so damn well, you'd think she was auditioning for Stepford the musical. But underneath, ice. Always ice. Her voice didn't rise. It sliced. Then came Jason, 2 years younger than me. Golden boy, at least in his own head. Could throw a football, could chug a beer, could wreck a truck in record time. Jobs never stuck. Relationships? Even shorter. If he got fired, it was because the boss was a dick. If he crashed the truck, it was the road was slippery. He never fucked up. The world just failed to cooperate. Rebecca, 4 years younger than me. Evelyn's little clone. Sweet voice in public, venom in private. She had a talent for finding shiny things and attaching herself to them. New boyfriends, rich friends, whatever made her feel important. She always got the bigger slice of cake. Always. Me, I was the one who stayed. The one who worked, saved, and lived within my means. I rented a tiny 2-bedroom with peeling paint and patchy grass. Dad hated it. Hated it. He'd run his hand along the crooked porch railing and say, "Sarah, let me buy you something better. You deserve more than this." And I always shook my head. "No, Dad, I'll make my own way." Because unlike Jason and Rebecca, I wasn't going to drain him dry while he was alive. I respected what he built. I knew every beam, every paycheck, every scar it cost him. I wasn't going to lounge in some plush apartment on his back while he was still breaking it for us. That was the difference. Jason and Rebecca saw Dad's money as a goddamn ATM. I saw it as blood, sweat, and bone. And yet, guess who ended up erased from the will? Life's a comedian with bad timing, isn't it? Then came the cancer. Stage 4, colon cancer. Hit him like a freight train. He went from broad-shouldered and booming to thin and pale in months. I was there. I was always there, driving him to chemo at 6 a.m., warming up soup he barely touched, holding his hand when the pain got too sharp. Jason and Rebecca, they were there for selfies. They breezed in with Starbucks, hugged him for 5 minutes, posted some caption about cherish your loved ones, then fucked off to brunch. Evelyn, she folded towels. She smiled politely. She said, "Don't make a fuss, Sarah. Everyone's grieving in their own way." Really, Mom? Because grieving looked a lot like getting your nails done while Dad vomited into a bucket. One night, Dad sat me down at the kitchen table. His voice was gravel, but his eyes were sharp. "Sarah, I'm updating the will. You'll be taken care of. You're the only one who's carried this family." I cried into my hands. He signed. His lawyer sealed it. Done. I thought that was the end of it. But apparently death wasn't enough to stop paperwork from evolving. Because now, here I was, staring at a magically updated will signed by a man 6 feet under. Jason smirking, Rebecca smirking, Evelyn calm, Chad, that slimy lawyer, his hands shaking just enough to betray something. And me? Sitting there in silence, wondering how the fuck you fight a family that's already buried you alive. I don't even remember leaving that office. One second, I was staring at a stack of papers signed by a corpse, and the next, I was outside in the Texas heat, the sun smacking me in the face like it had a personal grudge. Jason and Rebecca strutted past me, grins plastered on their faces like they just won the damn lottery. Jason tossed his keys in the air, caught them, winked at me, and said, "Don't spend all your sentimental value in one place." If I had a brick in my hand, that motherfucker wouldn't have made it to his truck. Rebecca trailed behind him, perfume so strong it felt like it was choking the air itself. She whispered as she brushed past, "You should be grateful, Sarah. At least you got something." Something. Like I'd just been handed a participation trophy for the Olympics of grief. And Evelyn? Oh, Evelyn didn't say a word. She just slid on her sunglasses, pearls gleaming, lipstick perfect, and linked her arm with Rebecca like she was leading a fucking parade. She walked right past me without even turning her head. Not even a fake, "we'll talk later, sweetheart," nothing. And that was it. That's when the realization hit me like a freight train. They hadn't just cut me out. They hadn't just stolen from me. They erased me. The house I grew up in, gone. The company Dad built with his bare hands, gone. The trust he wanted from me so I could finally go back to school, gone. All of it, gone. Hand it to Jason. the man-child who couldn't keep a job longer than it takes to microwave ramen, and Rebecca, who thought responsibility was remembering which credit card still had room left on it. And Evelyn? Evelyn had orchestrated it. I got into my car, slammed the door, and gripped the wheel so tight the leather creaked. My little 2-bedroom rental was only 15 minutes away, but that drive felt like hours. Every red light looked like a dare. Every honk felt like a fucking insult. By the time I pulled into the cracked driveway, my jaw hurt from clenching. Now, here's the thing you need to know. That little house? Dad hated it. Hated every peeling strip of paint and every patch of dead grass. He'd stand on the porch, shake his head, and say, "Sarah, let me put you somewhere better. You don't need to live like this. Not when I can help." And I always told him no. I wasn't Jason. I wasn't Rebecca. I wasn't going to drain him dry while he was still alive. I wanted to make my own way, even if it meant cracked driveways and crooked railings. But now I was supposed to make my own way with a box of photo albums and maybe a fishing rod. I dropped my head against the steering wheel and laughed out loud. Not the kind of laugh you hear at comedy shows, the kind that sounds like it's coming from somewhere dangerous. Because the absurdity was too much. My father, the man who once fought a cashier for double charging him for mashed potatoes, was supposedly signing new legal documents from the afterlife. Maybe I should have called Ghostbusters instead of a lawyer. The laughter sputtered out, leaving something colder behind. Not grief, not even shock, something sharper, metallic. Revenge had a taste, and it was sitting heavy on my tongue. But before I could burn down the whole circus, I needed proof. The next morning, I drove to Evelyn's house. Or should I say Jason and Rebecca's house now, according to that miracle will. The smell of fresh paint hit me before I even knocked. Rebecca opened the door, her smile wide and fake enough to peel paint on its own. "Oh, Sarah, what a surprise." "Cut the shit," I said, pushing past her. The living room looked like a crime scene, the victim being my father's memory. His recliner? Gone. His wall of fishing trophies? Gone. The shelves of black and white construction photos from his early years? Gone. Replaced with sterile white and gold furniture that looked like it had been picked out of a Kardashian garage sale. And there was Jason, sprawled across the couch with his boots up, eating Cheetos straight from the bag. Neon orange fingerprints smeared the new fabric like war paint. He grinned when he saw me. "Hey, sis, come to admire what Dad left us?" I wanted to choke him with his own cheesy fingers. Instead, I said, "Don't you fucking dare. Dad didn't leave you shit. You know it, I know it, and you're not even smart enough to cover your tracks." Rebecca rolled her eyes like she was already bored. "Sarah, honestly, you're embarrassing yourself. Dad clearly changed his mind. Maybe he realized you couldn't handle the responsibility." I laughed, a short, sharp bark. Right, Dad's ghost just waltzed into Chad's office with a pen and said, "Hold my coffin, I need to update the paperwork." You really expect anyone to buy that? Jason leaned forward, smirking. Maybe you should just accept that Dad trusted us more. And that's when Evelyn walked in, carrying a tray of lemonade, of all things, like we were at a summer picnic instead of in the middle of a fucking heist. Her hair was perfect, not a strand out of place, lipstick flawless. She set the tray down, folded her hands, and looked at me with eyes so calm they made my skin crawl. "Sarah, it's time you let this go. Your father wanted peace, not conflict." My stomach dropped. Because it wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. Steady, cold, certain. "Wow," I said, voice shaking. "So you're fine with this? Watching them rob Dad blind? Watching them erase me like I never existed?" Her eyes narrowed, and then she said the line that burned straight through me. "Don't be dramatic. You'll survive. You always do." And that was it. That was the thesis of my whole life.
Sarah survives, Sarah handles it. Sarah makes do while Jason and Rebecca float. But not this time. Not anymore. I stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. In the car, my hands shook, but not from fear, from fury. Because here's the thing, being underestimated is a dangerous fucking game, and I just decided to stop playing nice.
The thing about anger is it burns hot, but hot fades fast, and I wasn't about to let mine fade. Not when Evelyn, Jason, Rebecca, and that slick bastard Chad were sitting pretty on a fortune they stole from my dad. I needed proof. Not suspicion, not gut instinct, proof. And proof meant digging. Now, I could have tried to play Nancy Drew myself, but let's be honest. I'm 32, not 12, and the closest thing I've ever investigated is whether my DoorDash guy actually remembered the extra guac. So I made a call. His name was Frank Doyle, a private investigator who came highly recommended by one of Dad's old construction buddies. He's got a knack for finding shit people want buried, the guy had said. If Frank can make crooked politicians piss themselves, your family doesn't stand a chance. When I met him, he was exactly what I expected, and nothing like it. Mid-50s, hair going gray at the temples, a face carved up with lines that looked like they'd been etched there by years of laughing at other people's lies. His forehead was a roadmap of creases, his suit was one button away from retirement, and his eyes? Sharp, bright, always laughing. "Sarah Hayes," he said, shaking my hand with a grip firm enough to crack walnuts. "You look like someone who's had the rug pulled out and is standing there staring at the hardwood." Try stolen rug and hardwood set on fire." He chuckled. "Well, good news. I'm your fire extinguisher." Frank had that way about him, cutting through bullshit without making you feel like bullshit. And maybe that's why I trusted him enough to spill everything. I laid it all out. The funeral, the magically updated will, Evelyn's icy composure, Jason's smug grin, Rebecca's snide little digs, and Chad's trembling hands. Frank leaned back, steepling his fingers under his chin. "So let me get this straight. Daddy signs a will with you present, legit, dies. 3 weeks later, goes signs a new one with Captain Shaky Hands over here officiating." "Exactly." He grinned, wolfish. "Honey, I've seen preachers less crooked than that." I laughed, real laughter this time, first in weeks. "So you believe me?" Frank's eyes twinkled. "Sarah, if this isn't fraud, then I'm the Pope, and trust me, I look terrible in white." Frank worked fast. He didn't waste time with hand-wringing or sympathy. First thing he did was start with the courier records, because, as he explained, paper doesn't lie, people do. You'd be surprised how often cooks think a signature is enough, he told me, flipping through his notepad, but every document leaves a trail. Who delivered it, who signed for it, when it was logged. You want your smoking gun? Start there. And just like that, we were knee-deep in delivery receipts and timestamps. Here's where it got good. The updated will had supposedly been delivered to Chad's office 2 weeks after Dad died. That already stank worse than a porta potty in July. But the receipt? It was signed in handwriting that looked suspiciously polished. He tacked the paper with his pen. See that? That's not some random courier scrawl. That's careful, deliberate. Somebody wanted this signature legible. Why? I asked. Because when you're forging ones, what's one more forgery? He winked. Crooks love consistency. It made my stomach flip. And then there was Chad. The more I replayed that day in my head, the more his little tics stuck out. The hands that trembled just enough, the eyes that darted to Evelyn a fraction too long, the way he avoided looking at me when the fake will slid across the table. Frank noticed it immediately. "Your lawyer's dirty," he said flatly, leaning back in his chair. I blinked. "You think he was bribed?" He gave a dry chuckle. "Bribed if we're being polite. Complicit if we're being honest. Nobody with 20 years in the business looks at 2 wills and says, 'Yep, that makes sense,' unless he's been paid to look the other way." Jesus. "Don't worry, kid." He patted my hand, his palm warm, grounding. "We'll get him." Guys like Chad
always leave a trail. Usually it's receipts, sometimes it's motel rooms. Always it's arrogance. Motel rooms. The word stuck in my head like a splinter. I frowned. Why motel rooms? Frank grinned. Because when people are hiding one secret, they're usually hiding another. The way he said it made my stomach twist. Something I couldn't quite name yet, but I shoved it down. One betrayal at a time, Sarah.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, spin lazy circles, every creak of the blades sounding like Dad's voice saying, "Sarah, you'll be taken care of." But I wasn't taken care of. I was taken for a fool. And if Evelyn, Jason, Rebecca, and Chad thought I was going to roll over, they had another thing coming. Because now I had Frank Doyle in my corner. And Frank didn't play games. He played to win. Frank wasn't the kind of guy who wasted time with pep talks. No, we'll get through this, or stay strong. He was more of a, give me a shovel, let's dig up the rot and show the worms kind of man. 2 days after we first met, he called me with that voice that sounded like gravel and coffee. Meet me at my office. Got something you're going to want to see. Now, when I say office, don't picture some sleek downtown setup with glass walls and espresso machines. Frank's office was in a strip mall between a pawn shop and a taxidermy place that smelled like mothballs and bad decisions. His door squeaked, his blinds were crooked, and his filing cabinet looked like it had survived both world wars. But the man was sharp as a scalpel. He was leaning back in his chair when I walked in, feet propped on his desk, sipping coffee out of a chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Detective." He said, "Sit. This one's a doozy." He slid a folder toward me. Inside were copies of delivery receipts, phone records, and bank statements. And then, stapled to the corner, a blurry black and white photo. It took me a second to process it. A motel parking lot, a car I recognized. Evelyn's car. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. Frank leans forward, eyes glinting. "Thought you'd notice that. Your mother's wheels, parked outside a roadside motel, twice, both times on nights you were logged at the hospital with your old man." I froze. My throat went dry. He kept going, casual, like he was reciting the weather. And here's the kicker. Guess whose car was parked 2 spaces over? He flipped to another photo. Chad's Lexus. Same nights, same motel. I felt my stomach flip, like the floor had dropped out from under me. While I was in a cold hospital room, spooning broth into Dad's mouth, Evelyn was in some cheap motel with his lawyer, his best friend? Dark humor bubbled up, the only thing that kept me from screaming. Well, at least she stayed consistent. Always loved a man in a suit. Frank smirked. Suit, tie, briefcase full of lies. Classic combo. I shook my head, rubbing my temples. So Chad wasn't just dirty in court. He was dirty in bed? Frank raised a brow. Bingo. And that explains why he was willing to risk his license on this will crap. He's not just cashing Evelyn's checks, he's cashing in on her. I wanted to throw up. Rage, grief, disgust, it all tangled in my chest. My dad trusted Chad for 2 decades, let him into our home, called him a friend. And Evelyn? She'd been sleeping with him while Dad's body was being eaten alive from the inside?
"Do you see it now?" Frank asked, his voice low. "This isn't just fraud. This is a goddamn conspiracy." I nodded slowly. My nails dug into my palms so hard I felt crescents of pain. Yeah, I see it. The next days blurred into a cycle of digging, waiting, and quiet rage. Frank was relentless. He pulled credit card receipts that showed Evelyn and Chad dining out while Dad was in chemo. He found text records, late-night exchanges full of little hearts and can't wait to see you messages. He even dug up a photo of Evelyn and Chad at a charity gala, their hands almost touching, smiles just a little too bright. And suddenly, 1,000 tiny moments from my childhood started to rearrange themselves into a new, ugly picture. The times Chad lingered too long after dinners, the way Evelyn's voice went soft when she said his name, the private smiles I'd chalked up to inside jokes between old friends. No, they weren't friends. They were fucking liars. It made sense now why Evelyn was so calm, so smug, so certain at the reading of the forged will. She'd been planning this for years. She had her lover, my dad's so-called friend, sitting right there with the keys to the kingdom. And Jason and Rebecca, they were riding shotgun on the heist, grinning all the way.
One night, I was pacing my kitchen, the fridge humming too loud, when Frank called again. His tone was different this time. Serious. Heavy. "Sarah," he said. "We need to talk face to face. There's something you need to know, but I'm not sure you're ready for it." I gripped the phone tighter. "After the shit I've already seen, Frank, you think I'm not ready?" He sighed. "This one's personal. Real personal. It's not just about fraud anymore." My pulse jumped. "Spit it out." "Not on the phone. Tomorrow. My office, 10 sharp." And then he hung up. I stood there in the kitchen with my phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Because I knew. I didn't know the details yet, but I knew. This wasn't just about Evelyn cheating. This wasn't just about Chad forging paperwork. There was something bigger, something deeper, something that was about to make everything I thought I knew about my family explode. Evelyn's living room didn't look like anyone lived in it. It looked like a museum exhibit curated by someone who hated fingerprints, feelings, and my dad. The recliner he loved? Gone. The framed black and white job site photos he used to point at like they were war medals? Gone. In their place, white leather you could slip off of if you breathed wrong, gold lamps that screamed, "Don't touch me," and a bowl of fake lemons that smelled like fresh lies. Even the scent of Jad's aftershave had been bleached out and replaced with lemon cleaner and fear. Frank and I took the sofa nobody sits on. Evelyn sat in her ice queen chair, ankles crossed, pearls parked on her collarbones like a warning sign. She had a sweating glass of iced tea within reach and that tight little smile that said she'd rather be anywhere else and also that she thought she'd win. Frank put a fat folder on the coffee table and patted it like a loyal dog. Motel photos, card statements, late-night texts, courier logs, signatures that didn't match, the whole ugly parade. Frankly said, in that gravel coffee voice of his, "Afternoon, you mind if we run through a few things?" Evelyn's smile didn't crack. "I mind being accused in my own home." "Perfect," Frank said. We brought accusations. I didn't ease in. I was done with polite. I know about Chad. The motel off I-35 twice while Dad was in chemo. The dinner at Delaney's the night I slept in a hospital chair. The cute little heart emojis after midnight. You were screwing Dad's best friend while he was dying. Her eyes turned to glass. "Watch your language." "Oh, fuck my language," I snapped. "Your actions are the problem, not my syllables." Frank slid a photo free with 2 fingers. Evelyn's car, grainy and undeniable, parked under a buzzing motel sign. He didn't even look at it. His eyes stayed on her. "You recognize the vehicle?" "I recognize an invasion of privacy." "You'll recognize plenty today," Frank said mildly. My hands shook, and I laced them together so I wouldn't throw the bowl of fake fruit. "Why, Evelyn? Why erase me from Dad's will? Why do you hate me so much? What the hell did I ever do to you besides be the one who stayed?" Her chin lifted a fraction. "You don't understand adult relationships." "Try me." She went quiet. The house hummed like a fridge about to die. Outside, a car door slammed, and somewhere a dog barked like it had an opinion on justice. I waited. Frank waited. Evelyn held her breath like she could smother the truth with silence the way she smothered everything else. And then the mask slid. Not a dramatic tear-off, a small slip first. Her fingers tightened on the armrest. Her lip trembled. Her eyes flared. The controls she wore like foundation began to crack, and rage bled through. "She want the truth?"
she said, voice vibrating. Fine. You always wanted the truth, didn't you, Sarah? You wanted explanations like the world owed you a neat little bow. I wanted decency, I said, throat raw, from a mother who wasn't a glacier. Her laugh was sharp and ugly. Decency? From Edward? Don't you dare preach decency to me. From you, I said. And that did it. She exploded. Because you're his, she screamed. The pearls jumped on her chest. You are his, do you hear me? His face, his stubbornness, his sanctimonious bullshit. Every time I looked at you, I saw him. I couldn't breathe around you. My ears rang. What are you saying? I'm saying Jason and Rebecca are not his. They never were. They are mine and Chad's. We started 25 years ago when your father was married to the job and to his goddamn pride. He left me alone with a house and a child and excuses in my ear about how he needed to work harder to build the construction business because bigger competitors were circling like vultures. But Chad saw me. Chad cared about me. I stared. The room swum. You, she barreled on as if confession could outrun consequence. I did. I wanted to tell Edward. I did. I wanted to end it, divorce him, be with someone who actually touched me like I existed. And then the business took off. Do you remember those years? Contracts, money like we had never seen. Chad said it would be stupid to leave, stupid to throw away what our children could inherit because Edward finally struck gold after all those lean years.
Frank didn't move. He didn't breathe loud. He just watched her, eyes like razors, letting her dig her own grave with a silver spoon. Evelyn's voice dropped to a seethe. We made a plan. We keep the marriage, we keep appearances, we keep the money in reach so Jason and Rebecca, my children, can have what they deserve. Do you understand now? My mouth was dry. What I understand is you turned my father into a paycheck and my life into collateral damage. Her eyes sparked, and then your sainted father did what he always did. He chose you. She practically hissed it. He went to Chad, my Chad, and he signed everything to you, his beloved firstborn daughter, his legacy, his precious Sarah. You were the stumbling block. You were the obstacle between my children and what they were owed. I could taste metal. Owed? By who? The man they didn't belong to? He raised them, she shot back. He gave them his name. Because you lied. I survived, she snarled. And when Chad told me what Edward had done, when he told me you were about to take everything and leave Jason and Rebecca with scraps, after we had held this house together for decades, I did what I had to do. What you had to do was commit fraud, I said, each word a hammer. You forged a dead man's name. Her jaw clenched. And then, almost calm, almost smug, she said it. We corrected a mistake. I felt Frank shift beside me, the tiniest movement, like a predator lowering itself for the pounce. Evelyn kept going, voice picking up speed, confessing like the truth was gasoline and she had a match. Chad controlled the file. He knew the timing. He knew which courier we could trust. We had the practice signatures, the stamps, the language. All we had to do was wait for the funeral fog to lift, slip it in clean, and call it grief confusion if anyone asked. And they wouldn't ask, because they never do. People don't question pearls, Sarah. People don't question nice houses and calm voices and perfect lipstick. You watched him sign the real will, I said, the memory dragging its nails across my chest. You sat at that table and watched the man you married give me what he told you he would give me, and the moment he died, you called your boyfriend to fix it. I called the father of my children, she snapped. And yes, we fixed it, because you should never have been part of this family to begin with. Silence. Thick and choking. Outside, a lawnmower droned, like it too was tired of this shit. My body went cold, then hot, then nothing at all. I thought of Dad's hands shaking over a signature he believed would protect me. I thought of Jason's orange Cheeto fingerprints on a white couch he didn't pay for.
I thought of Rebecca's perfume choking out the last of my father's scent. And I thought of Evelyn smoothing a bedsheet in a motel room while I held a vomit bucket under the chin of the man she vowed to love. I put my palms flat on my thighs to keep from shaking. I said, "Say it again. Say all of it, so I can never pretend I misheard." She leaned forward, eyes bright with a kind of unholy relief. "Jason and Rebecca are not Edward's. They are mine and Chad's. I stayed married because the money got good, because my children deserved a future, and Edward chose you over them. We forged the will because we had to, because you were always in the way." There it was. 19 words to blow up a life. They are mine and Chad's. We forged the will because we had to. The room pressed in. For a second, I thought if my heart had just stopped. It didn't hurt. It felt empty. Then the emptiness filled with something else. Not rage. Not yet. Something cleaner. Something clinical. A brand new spine made of ice. I sat back. I said, "Thank you." I said softly. Evelyn blinked. For what? For finally telling the truth. Her mouth opened, ready to reload, when Frank moved for the first time. He crossed his ankle over his knee, leaned back like he had all the time in the world, and gave her that crooked little grin that makes his eyes look like they're laughing at a joke you haven't heard yet. Well, that was one hell of a monologue. She frowned. What? Academy worthy, he said, reaching into his jacket. The pacing was a tad manic in Act 3, but the reveals? Chef's kiss. He set a small black rectangle on the coffee table between the fake lemons and the evidence folder. A tiny red light blinked, steady as a heartbeat. Evelyn's face drained like someone pulled the plug. Frank tapped the recorder with one finger, gentle as a bartender setting down a shot. You've got a voice for radio, Evelyn, and a confession for court. He smiled wider. The jury's gonna eat this shit up. Her hand flew to her pearls like they might float her to safety. You can't. Record in a one-party consent state, sugar? I can, and I did. And even if I couldn't, you just told your daughter and a licensed investigator you forged a will and lied about paternity for 2 decades. We could write this on a billboard and call it outreach. I exhaled. A laugh scraped up from somewhere I didn't know had any laughs left. Told you he was good.
Frank gave me a little 2-finger salute without taking his eyes off Evelyn. "Ma'am," he added, polite as a funeral. "Next time you want to keep a secret, maybe don't scream it in surround sound on your own couch." Evelyn's composure tried to claw its way back onto her face and failed. Fear replaced it. Naked, human, ugly. It looked good on her. Honest. Finally. I stood. My legs held. That surprised me. "We're done here," I said. "For now." "You won't win," she whispered, but it sounded like a prayer no one was listening to. "Jason and Rebecca will always have more than you." I smiled. Not sweet, not cruel. I don't know what it looked like, but it felt like a sunrise you didn't think you'd live to see. "Maybe, but they'll never have this." I nodded at the blinking red light. "They'll never have the truth." Frank gathered the folder, pocketed the recorder like a magician palming his best trick, and rose with a satisfied sigh. "Appreciate the hospitality," he said, glancing around at the white and gold. "Real cozy, like a jewelry store with anxiety." We walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when Evelyn found her voice again, smaller now. "Sarah," she said. I didn't turn. "Yes?" "You were never supposed to be part of this." I looked back over my shoulder. "I am this. I'm the part you couldn't erase." Outside, the sky was a hard blue, the kind that makes heat look metallic. Frank held the door for me like a gentleman, and then, once it clicked shut behind us, let out a low whistle. "Hell of a matinee, 5 stars, would subpoena again." I snorted. "You and that recorder." He patted his pocket. "Old habit. Corrupt city councilman cured me of trusting memory.
Besides, he winked, you never know when a pearl necklace is going to turn into a noose. I laughed for real then. It felt like stepping out of a freezer into sunlight. It felt like breathing. We didn't say much walking to the car. We didn't have to. The plan we hadn't spoken yet was already there between us, solid as concrete. Lawyers, filings, experts, injunctions, and something else too. Something petty and perfect and sharp that would make Evelyn wish the only thing she lost was money. But that's for later. Right now, there was just the road back to my little rental, cicadas screaming like they wanted every secret in the world dragged into the sun, and a recorder in Frank's pocket blinking red like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me or Evelyn or Chad. It belonged to the truth, and it was finally loud. And that's the story, at least for now. My mother spent 25 years fucking my dad's lawyer, raised 2 kids that weren't even his, forged his will the second he was in the ground, and then screamed her confession in her own living room while Frank's recorder blinked like a ticking bomb. So here's my question for you. If you were me, would you have gone straight for the courtroom with that tape? Or would he let Evelyn sweat a little first? Maybe serve her lemonade back with a subpoena garnish?
Drop your verdict in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed listening to how a family heirloom turned into a goddamn crime scene, hit subscribe, smash the like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.